Well, Darryl Smith, Executive Director with Homesite, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Absolutely. Now, I know that you recently joined Homesite as the Executive Director,
Yes,
and then
indeed.
all of this chaos broke out. So let's hear from you about what made you join Homesite.
Well, my relationship with Homesite goes back to the very early 90s, back in the day, as it were. I was a broker with Windermere Real Estate way over on Genesee Street, and I was put in touch with Homesite as they were just getting started with building homes in the community that were affordable, at our standards, which is typically about 80% of the area median income. So we're not a builder or a mortgage lender that focuses on the quote unquote regular market per se. We're really focusing on creating wealth in communities of color and low and moderate income communities through home ownership and homebuyer education and community support. So I was asked to be the listing broker for these 4 homes that sit above the Seattle Tennis Center. They're still right down here just off of MLK. And I loved the mission and what they were about. And then all these years later, I was essentially reintroduced to the opportunity of taking on the leadership of Homesite, which was a surprise to me. But I've known Tony Toe, our director emeritus, as we call him now, for all these years, working in partnership and community, whether it be through community cleanups and working in neighborhood-based politics, if you will, and just community development. So it's a real honor and a challenge to head this incredible organization that has a 30-year history of, frankly, doing some really good things in community. We want to see if we can keep doing it and do even more.
Amazing. Well, sounds like they have some great leadership at the helm. I'm glad you joined them, Darryl. And yeah, Tony Toe, big supporter of Africatown Community Land Trust, and we work closely with him on RSET. A lot of the other groups joining that group. So let's hear now about how Homesite is adjusting during this time. I know a lot of people are working remotely. What is it looking like for you guys to stay connected to community at this time?
Yeah, it's been a real challenge because our staff of 30 is all pretty much like everybody else, who has the ability to do so. When we recognize, quite frankly, the privilege of being able to work remotely, not everybody can, and we need to be talking about that, right? But we are staying safe and connected to one another, working remotely. And in terms of connecting with the community, something that we are doing is we're doing our best to leverage with other organizations. So as an example, our community development team is partnering with some of the area business associations like the MLK BIA and others to put out the word that Southeast Seattle is still open for business. So there's a great website that's up right now. South Seattle Emerald picked up on the story and is doing a great job of promoting the fact that you can still do business in Southeast. Yes, it's different and it's challenging, but everything from picking up your lunch food over at Island Soul, which I did last week, or going to the butcher shop in Columbia City, waiting your turn to go in, or, patronizing small businesses that may have an online presence is still really important. What we're trying to make sure is we can be just a small part of helping the community, particularly the small business community, which is largely here in the South End, and I know Africatown supports as well, those businesses that are run by POC folk, that are run by women, that are run by immigrant and refugees. We want to make sure that our business community as we know it can stay in place, can continue after we get through this crisis. So anything we can do to help them, just ride this out, either by bringing a few bucks in, by developing a new way of doing business, is something we want to support. So we've come up with our small business grant program, which I'd be thrilled to talk a little bit about. But I also want to say how much I admire what Africatown has been able to do. King Garrett and I, our relationship goes back to when I was serving in the mayor's office a bunch of years ago as deputy mayor. And King actually lived just 2 doors down from me on my block here. So we got to know each other. And I'm impressed with what Africatown's been able to do all these years. It's really incredible, quite frankly. But not surprising, I should say, with King behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. Such a force, right? Such a force in the community, and King has shown tremendous leadership in terms of, bringing a lot of these ideas to fruition with people behind him and working alongside him and partnering with him, and also having great mentors too at the helm. I mean, Don Mason has been one of the Africatown advisors really from the beginning. And I think that really shines a light, the connection between the intergenerational,
Yeah.
yeah, aspect of the building of Africatown is part of it as well. So thank you for that, Darryl. We're working hard over here.
I know you are. I know. I know you are,
Yes.
especially during this time too, because the community really needs us to step up as organizations and to show leadership and partnership and frankly, occasionally to be a little humble too and just say, listen, there's some good ideas out there. What do you need from us? How can we be supportive,
Yeah, I think one of the greatest things that I love about community-based work is understanding that when it's people from the community in the helms of leadership, you really get the feeling that we are in tandem with community. We're not coming with all of the solutions, right? We're asking them what they need. We're allowing them to help us shape our programming and our processes. And I think that is essential as we talk about community-based work. So let's hear a little bit more about this grant that you mentioned. I know that a lot of people have been pulling funds together to help small businesses and organizations during this time. Let's hear a little bit more about this, Darryl.
Yeah, so what happened to us last year, we had developed a much smaller version of this program, which was to support existing Southeast businesses. As an example, a cafe might say, listen, I don't need to get a big giant loan from Chase or whomever. I just need a few bucks to get an updated dishwasher, and then I could do a lot more with my business, right? So we did that program last year. It was about maybe a little shade less than $50,000. In small grants, they were about $2,000. And sometimes that's all that a business needed just to get that next little step over, right? So in response to COVID, hearing from how much struggle was going on for not just our restaurants, but, I haven't been able to go to my barber shop in over a month, right? I had to learn to cut my own hair for the first time in 50 years, didn't do all that well, but I'm trying, so we know that there's challenge out there. And what we were trying to do is create this fund based on what we did last year, but we wanted to go much bigger. So we reached out to a couple of investors, a couple of foundations that partner with Homesite, and they just stepped up right away because they also recognize when we described what we're trying to do and how frankly fragile and yet at the same time strong and resilient our entrepreneurs down here are. They just need a little something to get through, and maybe the little bit of money we can provide while they bridge to other funds might be part of the story of what it's going to take to survive all of this as a small business, because we don't want to see the Rainier Valley, Southeast Seattle, suffer greatly. And I suspect we are going to have some losses. Maybe we've had some already, but we want to see if we can help people survive this so that the business climate doesn't completely change. And we battle displacement all the time. Homesite is part of that story of trying to prevent displacement by getting people into homes and keeping them from being kicked out of those homes when circumstances become really dire, right? That's part of our mission, right? So from our perspective, doing the same for our small business community is important. So what we did is we created a really simple form. It's one page. You fill it out, send it in. We're going to evaluate all of those forms, and we wanted the criteria to be very specific too. So geographic, yes, Southeast Seattle, but more importantly, businesses of 10 or less, 50% of those businesses have to be 5 people or less, right? And then right at the top, we're very upfront in saying POC-led, women-led, woman-led, English as a second language or proficiency. We also wanted to make sure that, we're saying, listen, we want to ask you about how many people of the business supports in a family. So we have a little grid that says, is your business supporting a family of 5? What's your income, right? So we're really trying to be targeted about this and have this be a leverage point, not the answer to everything. So that small business that hits those qualifications can get, and we wanted to make the award bigger. So we're trying to do up to $5,000, right? So they get that. And then we can also provide a little bit of a conduit of information because it's a lot of stuff out there right now. So if the business owner says, well, what else can I do? We can say, well, here's support that's available through the city, or here's the Paytech Protection Program. Here's the link to get started there. So we're trying to be a little bit of that kind of good broker of information because there's a lot out there. It's very confusing and it's hard to navigate all of this. So if we can play a small role in that area too, we'd like to do that as well.
Well, I think that you really highlighted a lot of ways that you've broken down barriers, right? Barriers to entry, barriers for business owners to fill out this form, to get the funding. I think a lot of what we experience in any time of crisis, this is unlike any other, but in any time of crisis, what we experience is kind of this release of resources, and then this kind of, let's figure out how to do this right? And it's always that way in a sense of using intermediary agencies like Homesite, Africatown, Community Land Trust to really connect to the community and connect to those business owners.
Exactly.
I think that, yeah, there's a lot of pegs in that system, but I think you guys have ironed out a lot of the barriers that we see most of the time. One of the things that I was wondering about is the outreach. Right now, you guys have this program. How are you getting this information out to the public and to the business owners out there in Southeast Seattle?
Well, one way is through. That's why I was so thrilled that Africatown reached out and said, "Hey, we'd like to do a little interview," because this is really important, and a lot of it has been, frankly, some word of mouth. Now, we, through our community development and business development manager, Sarah Valenta, who runs the program and did last year, she's got a great sort of network. And so we were immediately on the horn, reaching out to everybody and spreading the word that this is coming. We put it on our website, of course, and made it easily clickable to get to the description of the program. That too is one page, and the application lower down on the screen, one page, to get those in. We're trying to get the money out on the street before April 20th, because we want people to have the money for those May bills, right? And then potentially information to get to another place for resources. But we know May is coming up. April might have been really tough. Maybe folks used up the last of whatever resources they had to get those bills paid. So we want to get the money out as quickly as possible. Some simplicity was going to be important. Getting the word out hugely has also been important. The press release that we sent out was picked up by just a couple of outlets, most notably South Seattle Emerald, Hometown, online media for us here in Southeast Seattle. And we got over 100 applications in 4 days. So we know the need is great out there. And I think, when I talked to my barber on the phone, just saying, hey, just checking him in, how you doing? What's going on with Jay Styles and everything, so the word is getting around through community connections, and we're doing our best to push it out as well.
Well, this is great. And I just want to commend Homesite for doing this program, launching this funding opportunity for business owners. We see a lot of business owners falling through the cracks. Some of the federal funding is, depleted. So I'm really, this is great to see this community resilience. Darryl, thank you again for sharing your story, sharing this program. We'll make sure that we do our part to get folks to, apply. We want to make sure that, that businesses are staying up and sustainable during this time. So thank you again, Darryl.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to see you, and I look forward to seeing you when we can, get back to some semblance of normal life. I'd love to come down there and say hey and hang out with the folks.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We'll make it happen.
All right. Sounds good. Have a good day. Thank you.